What kind of community did you grow up in?
I grew up in Howell Township, New Jersey. It was a typical suburb with many houses all around. But when I got there, we were the first um, house on the block. All around us was nothing but woods and trees, and Howell was mostly chicken farms and horse farms and woods. It was a small town. Now it's one of the biggest towns in New Jersey, but at the time, there was really nothing there. As we lived there throughout my childhood, it grew and grew and grew. It became much bigger. But when we first started there was nothing there but woods and trees and my house.
What did your parents do for work? Where is their job located and how
Okay,
did
one
they get
question at a
there?
time. One question at a time.
What did your parents do for work?
Okay, my father was a lawyer. He worked in New York, but he died before I was born. My mother was a housekeeper. She took care of 9 children after my father died, and she stayed at home to take care of us. Next question.
Where was their job located and how did they get there?
My mother was at home, so she didn't have to go anywhere. My father was in New York, and he would commute by train when he was alive, but that was before I was born. He would commute. We lived on Long Island at the time. My family did. I wasn't born yet. And he would get on the train every day to go to work in Manhattan.
How did your community affect what you did for fun?
Well, when I was growing up in Howell, there wasn't a lot of things to do. It wasn't like living in the city where you had all sorts of attractions everywhere. There was a bowling alley a few miles away. We bowled a lot. There was a movie theater, and that was pretty much it for outside of the home activities. So we did a lot of sports. We all had big backyards in our neighborhood, and we played a lot of sports. We played basketball and baseball and football all in our backyard. And also, we had the woods behind us, and we would spend a lot of time exploring in the woods. The woods went on for miles and miles behind our house. Now it's all cut down and made it to other houses, but at the time, we spent a lot of time in the woods, and about a half-mile away was a place called Gunther's Pond. And in Gunther's Pond, we would ice skate in the winter, and it was a lot of fun every winter. If it got cold enough, which it got a lot colder back then, we'd spend time ice skating on the pond, which I don't think you really can do anymore. But at the time, it was a lot of fun.
How did you travel from place to place? Did you do this often?
How do we travel from place to place? You had to have a car where we lived. There was bus lines that were about a mile walk away, or you could go on the train, but that was a very long walk away. Basically, if you didn't have a car, you couldn't live in Howell Township. Uh, to travel to the grocery store, to travel to the post office, to travel to a movie theater, bowling out, anything, you basically needed a car. So the only thing you didn't need a car for was school. School was close by, half a mile away. We walked there. Everything else, you needed a car.
How did your community affect what you ate?
How did my community affect what we ate? Well, we did have a big garden in our backyard. We grew a lot of our food. In the summer, we would grow corn, melons. We would grow peppers and tomatoes and potatoes and onions. We'd grow carrots, beans. So a good lettuces. We grow a good portion of our summer. We'd grow in the summer. We'd grow a good portion of our food that we'd eat. The rest of the time, the community didn't really affect what we ate. I guess you get fresh eggs if you wanted to from local chicken farms, but we didn't really do that. We went to the grocery store to get our eggs. So other than growing our own food, it didn't really affect us too much.
What was life for you in general?
Life in general, it was quiet. There wasn't a lot of cultural activities. There wasn't a lot of hustle and bustle. It was a quiet place with a lot of woods and a lot of your friends were scattered all over. Some of my best friends were 6 miles away, and I'd have to sometimes. I used to run a lot when I was a kid. I could run to their house, but it would take me an hour, almost an hour, to do so. Um, for fun, you would invite friends over to play mostly. That was what you did for fun. Your friends would be, and back then you didn't have play dates. Everyone would just be around. The mothers mostly were around, and the kids would be around in their backyards. And you'd go into somebody else's backyard and see if they were there, and if they were there, you would play, or you'd call them up on the phone and say, "Hey, let's get a pickup game of basketball together, or let's go do this or that," and you'd play mostly lots of sports.
Did you have any wildlife in town?
Yeah, we grew up in a woodsy area, so yeah, we had lots of wildlife. We had skunks and woodchucks and rabbits and all kinds of different birds. In fact, we actually were able to save 3 different baby birds as we were growing up that were kicked out of their nest or fell out of the nest. And once they're out of their nest, they can't get back in. So you either save them or they get eaten. We saved a sparrow and 2 starlings, and we raised them as babies, and they became sort of tame. That wasn't to their best interest as they grew older because they were shunned by other birds, but at least they survived, and they grew up to adulthood. They were sort of half pets, half wild. But yeah, there was lots of wildlife. There weren't many deer. Now there's lots of deer around. At the time there weren't many deer, but yeah, there were all sorts of critters around.
Was there any moose?
Any moose? No, there were no moose. We don't live that far north.
Okay.
What else?
Um,
You're not reading from the script anymore.
Yeah.
To make it up your own questions. Are there any questions from the script?
we did all of them.
Oh, you did all those questions. All right, let's wrap this up then. Sign
Ooh,
off.
did you catch your own fish in the lake?
Did we catch our own fish? No, there were very small fish in the lake, but you couldn't. They weren't big enough to eat, and we weren't fishermen anyway. So even if they were big enough to eat, we wouldn't be able to catch them. Got anything else for me?
No.
All right, let's wrap this up then, shall we?
Yep.